Just 6 games in, Sampdoria are sitting pretty in 8th place, with 9 points courtesy of a surprise opening day win against Fiorentina and a spirited, if not somewhat dull, 0-0 draw with Inter. But just like how chaos engulfed Sampdoria in real life, trouble was waiting just around the corner. In the meantime, Sampdoria were preparing for a trip to the home of the world's oldest university and most bastardised pasta sauce, Bologna. A perfect start saw Gabbiadini score inside the opening minute, only for Andrea Conti, making his first start, to decide he'd played enough only 5 minutes later. Moussa Barrow equalised, but Bologna were unable to turn their man advantage into a win. Conti was given a week's fine, and suspended for the home tie against real-life champions-elect Napoli. As was expected, Napoli started brightly, but the game turned on a 37th minute injury to Piotr Zielinski. Gabbiadini's tame penalty was saved just before half-time, but Sabiri eventually gave Sampdoria the lead midway through the second half. Sabiri turned provider for the second, and another giant killing was complete. The mood was high at the Luigi Ferrari Stadium. Sporting director Daniele Fagioni had successfully negotiated new deals with centre-back Murillo and out-on-loan midfielder Askildsen. This news had not gone down well with everyone, however. Negotiations had broken down with left-back Tommaso Orgello, and each new contract announcement had only served to anger him further.
Why does it tell me Saudi رفقيه no counterat?
It's disappointing we haven't reached a solution.
Yeah, let's not ruin the mood.
In private, Musterman thought Fagioni was just a dark-haired version of Brandt from The Big Lebowski, and whilst Orgello's demands weren't outrageous, he was not about to throw his boss under the bus. Back to football, and there was a game against Cremonese to prepare for. Winless in 5, this should be a relatively easy tie, but Sampdoria couldn't deal with their directness, and 2 goals from David Ekoriki set Cremonese up for a shock win. Quagliarella pulled a goal back barely a minute after coming on and sealed an unlikely comeback in the 93rd minute. It's hard not to draw a parallel between the disappointing performance and the turmoil of the week before, and things were only about to get worse. The 2-0 defeat to Torino brought an end to Sampdoria's Coppa Italia campaign in the second round, and a trip to Atalanta beckoned only 3 days later. It took 90 seconds for Sampdoria to concede. Scalvini's far post header was all that was required to secure the win, and Sampdoria offered little attacking threat to suggest they would mount a comeback. When employers are unhappy and material conditions aren't improving, the next step is withdrawal of labour. Of course, without union backing, no one would admit that is what they were doing. Mihaila, Muru, Gabbiadini, Ferrari and Bereshinski all withdrew from the upcoming game through injury within a 3-day period. With so many players missing, Sampdoria looked disjointed, and a 0-0 draw against the 18th placed Lecce was anything but sweet. A 4-game winless streak is, in itself, not cause for panic, but the mood around the Luigi Ferraris has soured significantly. A coldness permeates from journalists, and questions continue to circle regarding the Orgello impasse. There is a feeling that defeat in the upcoming Liguri derby could be costly.
2 changes for Sampdoria as Conti and Juricic come in for Rincon and Ver, as they hope home comforts will bring a return to winning ways against the Spezia team unchanged from their recent draw against Sassuolo. Early Sampdoria corner, Baldini is short, drills it low and wins. Goal, 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 goal! Choreography fit for a ballerina, and Sampdoria have an early lead. The pressure is on Sampdoria, but they have been the better side. Weeks. See Sabiri, it's got to be 2. Dragalski spreads like a bald eagle. Sampdoria continue to dominate here. Torre over the top. Juricic takes 2 bites of the cherry, oath bitter. Sabiri with another corner, and Murillo! Is this the way to score, Murillo? No. Can Spezia do something here? Record to deliver. Unzola! Oh! Off the post and Ferrari clears.
Some much needed respite. With a World Cup break looming, a long winless run would linger until January, so breaking that cycle was vital, especially considering their next game was against Special One Jose Mourinho's Roma. There was to be no upset this time. Cristante opened the scoring from a corner before Zaniolo put Belotti through for a late second. Sampdoria had set up more defensively than usual, and as a result offered nothing going forwards. And with that, the World Cup break was underway. 2 months of emptiness for Italian fans who could only support as neutrals as Brazil secured their 6th World Cup with a comeback win on penalties over Portugal. There was also 2 months of preparation time for Giovanni Mustermann. Armed with a better understanding of his players' competencies and weaknesses, he was able to plan out improvements for the second half of the campaign. Conti, Colli, Muru, Burr, Caputo and Gabbiadini were all transfer listed, as Mustermann made it clear to the squad that big changes were afoot. Perhaps surprisingly, Augello was not on the chopping block, despite yet another breakdown in negotiations. Now it's all good and well letting players know they are no longer wanted, but until bids are submitted and contracts signed, they all remain part of the squad. A series of uninteresting friendlies took place for players to maintain fitness, and eventually, Serie A football returned. A nice easy game against AC to kick things off. A spirited performance from Sampdoria was not enough to keep Milan at bay, as Ibrahimovic's 80th minute header separated the two sides. A trip to Allianz next, as Sampdoria looked to avoid a 3rd consecutive defeat against Bond villain Massimo Allegri's Juventus. A great start for Sampdoria as Bereshinski feeds Quagliarella 18 minutes in, only for Rabiot to bundle home from close range midway through the second half. With 2 minutes remaining, Baldini's cross deflects into the path of Juricic and Sampdoria manage yet another giant killing. The following days were nothing short of busy. Andrea Conti rejected the advances of Cremonese, Ordero signed a new contract, Burr departed for Austria, and Sampdoria signed Darmstadt target man Big Tietz. Relegation threatened Monza were next and were dispatched with ease. Conti, in for the suspended Berezinski, set up Quagliarella twice before Baldini fed Mihaila for a late third. Back-to-back wins for the first time this season, and Sampdoria celebrated their victory by adding another Ferrari to their garage. Sassuolo's Gianmarco arriving for £3 million. His first job? To keep his old employers at bay.
Gianmarco Ferrari comes straight into the starting lineup against his former team. Spicy. 4 changes for Sassuolo. Toljan, Torstvedt, Traore and Ehrlich all start. Did you know Sassuolo is the heart of Italy's tiling industry? Fascinating. Traore cuts it back for Pinamonti. Ordero's a magnet, the football a ball-bearing. Sampdoria move it neatly in midfield. Sabiri dinks it to Florenzi. Florenzi! The man mounting Consigli will not be moved. Berardi now hits Sabiri's pocket. Goal! Deflected in off Ferrari.
The winning streak was over as soon as it had begun. But Mustermann's squad revolution was still underway. Deals were finalised to send Caputo and Colli to Lokomotiv Moscow, Gabbiadini to Brighton. There was still time remaining for surprise deals, but first, a game against Empoli. Tietz gets his first start and makes an immediate impact, but the lead lasts barely a minute as Bajrami turns home Parisi's cross. A familiar sight as Sampdoria once again drop points against the lower placed side. But there's no time to lick wounds with a short turnaround before they face Salernitana. Or not. A waterlogged pitch saw the game postponed at the last minute. The players got to enjoy an impromptu day off, while staff continued to work behind the scenes to make one last major signing before the transfer window closed. A Champions League winner, an international for a top 10 FIFA-ranked national team. A truly transformative midfielder who would immediately elevate the players around him. Dani Ceballos was available and... What's that? He signed for Lazio instead? Ah well. The transfer window closed with no further activity. Conti and Muru remained with Sampdoria, whilst Ferrari and Tietz were the only arrivals. Across both windows, Mustermann had signed 6 and sold 6, with a net profit of £50,000. At the halfway point, Sampdoria sit in 11th on 25 points, already surpassing their real-life counterparts. With almost double the points of 18th place Empoli, they appear to be safe from a relegation battle. There can be no room for complacency, however. Only 2 of their 6 wins have come from teams below them in the table, and there can be no guarantees they will continue to pick up wins against the bigger sides. If you've made it this far, thank you. Down in the description, you will find a list of other great FM content that appeared in the newsfeed during this episode. From incredible YouTubers, guides and blogs covering all things Football Manager from throughout the community. Next episode, we'll embark on our first set of return fixtures as we look to guarantee safety and maybe, just maybe, consider an assault on the top half. See you then.